Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about the connection and sometimes disconnect between system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs. How are you today? Well, you said you're a little bit sick.
We're both ill.
Yeah, although like I said, mine is probably more allergies and a lingering flu, but that's what happens when you're old and infirm.
Yeah,
Felled by bugs more easily. Bugs! Oh, what a segue. Look at that.
Right, it
Bugs.
would be good. We haven't talked about any. Have you? Well, did you do any gaming this weekend?
Uh yeah. Yeah, we played Traveler. We had skipped the week before that because I was sick. We played this week and it went well. And we're not going to play this week, unfortunately, because I've got, not unfortunately, but I have family in town. So
And is
we'll have to
this
wait until
actual
the.
Traveler, not like you've hacked into something else?
No, 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 no. We're playing Mongoose Traveler Second Edition 2022 Rules Update in the Spinward Marches, and it's going well. It's actually all the good things, and I'll talk more about Traveler in another episode or episodes, but all the good things that Traveler puts forth as potential, we're starting to experience, which is nice. How about you? Anything?
It's more ISS Vanguard. We actually did a really cool. It properly felt like a Star Trek episode. Like we landed on this planet, and there was these aliens that lived on these cities, were on the backs of giant crabs, and one of the giant crab cities had disappeared in the distance. We had to go and rescue them, but before that, we talked to some cities, and one we went to two different cities at the same time. We split the party because it's a board game, not a role playing game, so you can do that. Um, and on one of them, there was this guy that was like, "I want you to, when you find the city, I want you to frame this other city for doing it." And then we went to the city they wanted to frame. There was a princess there. There was, I've been told to marry the person from this other city, but I said no. And we're like, this is ridiculous. This is so. And then we found the city, and then there was another party involved in who might be framed, and then it became a big hoo ha. And but it was really cool. It was like a well done, like episode of Star Trek with there wasn't any combat. It was flying things and searching for things, and then diplomacy with aliens who had think of things in completely different ways than we do, and then at the end of it, these two couples got married, and then went away and did what married people do. And then the next day there was a funeral because apparently the males of the species die when they have sex. But then there was thousands of little bug babies, so it was all okay. And it was like, this is so it was good. So yeah, it's another good session. And next
Good,
week,
good, good.
and then
I'm
we've
glad
got
to
some
hear it.
big encounter up next. I think we're
So I
getting towards
force.
the end
Oh,
game.
go ahead. So I was just say I foreshadowed if it's not already obvious by the title of this episode, but I foreshadowed by mentioning
And
bugs.
our
And obviously,
backgrounds.
we've both got xenomorph. Well, you've got a xenomorph. I have colonial marines in my background. We're going to talk about the Alien RPG from Free League. And we're doing this. I mean, this may seem like old news because the game's been out for 5 years, I believe. But there is some change in the wind here. So we are this is a bit of foreshadowing from us. So if you're not familiar, you've probably heard, but if you're not, you heard of the game, but if you're not familiar of how the game functions and its focus and some of the things that make it unique, we're going to hit on those, and then we're going to move to some commentary and some talk about this upcoming Kickstarter for a second edition. So how do you want to start out with just a quick overview if there are people out there who are not familiar with this game and how it functions as a system?
Well, it's a free league game, which if you've played any other free league game, will tell you that your characters are useless and fail at everything.
Free League is deep in the grit. Yeah, that's for sure. And Free League's house system using a pool of D6s wherein you are successful if you roll at least 1 6 on any die
Yeah,
is the mechanical basis for this. Now, statistically, if you're curious, or actually backing up from that, characters have 4 stats, and there are 12 skills with 3 skills pinned to each of those 4 stats. You add the skill, you add the stat, You roll that many d6s, and you hope to get at least 1 6. If you get additional sixes, there is a limited menu of options for what those additional successes can do. It's almost always just add more damage. Just if you're curious, an average stat is 2, and if you're a professional in a skill, that'd be a 2. So if you are just rolling 2 and 2, you have about a 52% chance of success.
Yeah.
If you add equipment, like weapons, add additional dice. You're always adding or subtracting dice from the pool. The idea of rolling a 6 never changes. But the numbers, the way that the system works is that when you are forced to roll, you're gonna fail, I think, more often than in most games,
Yeah.
especially like your D20 based high hero games.
Oh, yeah.
Your game, your character in this game is not a hero. Your character in this game is a more than likely soon to be killed somewhere or another.
I mean, I put 2d20 at the far end of like how often players fail, because
Yeah,
between having competent characters that roll for the things they're good at and don't do the things they're bad at, and having momentum and
yeah,
threat or whatever else it is, players in 2d20 shouldn't be failing a huge amount till you get into combat, because then you've got opposed rolls, and so then that changes the maths. But generally, 2d20 players can succeed quite a lot. Yes, in most free league games, you find this kind of thing. Now, this then definitely pushes into the kind of game where you should only roll when it's important. You
right.
don't, if you're a GM that forces, oh, there's a door. I will roll to see if you can open the roll
Yeah,
to
you
do
shouldn't be
stealth. Right? If
doing
you
that.
roll for everything, like, no, they're going to be failing a lot. But the failing in this, and this is true in most free league games. In most free league games, if you fail a roll, there's usually a way to re-roll. So this is, it
You
could be taking
push it, is
damage.
what they
It can be
call it.
put, yeah. And there's usually a way of doing this. Now, in this one, and this is both a good thing and a bad thing about Alien. In Alien, when you push a skill roll, you build up stress, which initially doesn't sound too bad. And as you build up stress, this then gives you extra dice, which you can roll in when you're doing things. So that's actually quite good. You get
Yeah,
these extra dice, gives you a better chance seeing. But when you roll the bad symbol, which I'm assuming is the 1 because it's the face hugger symbol,
it's
but
a little
obviously
face hugger. Yeah,
I never had the proper dice, so I'm guessing it's a 1. If that then symbol pops up on a roll, you then have to make a panic roll, and this is where it's both good and bad at the same
yeah.
time,
So I
because
want to I want to back up on one thing with this,
go on.
just to make sure if someone out there hasn't played this, that they're clued in on this. You have your base pool of dice, which is based on your attribute, your skill, and situational modifiers, which could include equipment like a weapon. And you end up adding and subtracting dice from that base pool, and then you have a final pool that you're going to roll. If you fail, you don't come up with any successes. You can push the roll, which means you can re-roll it. But when you do that, you add 1 stress die, which is an additional d6 that has it. If you have the little fiddly dice that they'll sell to you, it's a different color and it has different symbols on it. And as you as you either choose to push rolls, you will build up more stress, or as you are exposed to things that are stress causing, like your friend gets his head blown off, or an alien bursts out of someone's chest, or someone fails certain rolls. If someone in the party fails a roll, that adds to stress. There's a long list of things that can add stress. What that does is it adds points of stress to your character, which is additional dice that you roll, which I see in this I see a rationale for this and a setting um, genre connecting mechanic here where you're getting amped up, and
Yeah,
so
it's your
you're more
adrenaline.
fired up, but that also, because you're running more hot, you risk failure. So if you roll any ones on any of the stress dice out of your pool, you then risk panic. And I think that here we should just how does the panic mechanic work, and where does it fit into the game, and then we can comment on it
Yeah.
later.
So panic mechanic. So we've already said that what triggers it. Well, it's a couple. The first thing that triggers it, if you roll a face hugger symbol on one of your stress dice, and bear in mind, once you've built up stress, you are rolling those stress dice on every skill roll.
Yep.
So if you roll one of your face hugger symbols, then you have to do a panic. But there's other things. So some of those other bad things you said. So some other panic things can trigger panic.
Yeah.
If you're pinned down, if you suffer a critical injury, if you're attacked essentially by an alien, or if you see something really horrifying. So there's quite a few things that can trigger panic on top of just rolling one of
Yeah.
these
And
ones.
some of them are objective, like
Yeah.
listed there, and some of them also are just GM fiat. The GM can
Yes.
say, hey, listen, everyone's got to make a panic roll right now.
So then what you do for your panic roll is you roll a d6 and you add your stress level. Now, nothing happens if that total is between 1 and 6. So when your panic's only on sort of 1 or 2, it's fine. It's not an issue. You roll, you get a low number and it's fine. What you then start happening is, so at the start of the game when you're starting to panic a bit, your character's stressed, sorry, you'll get an extra dice and it's all good because you're not nothing bad. And even if you roll sort of a 7 or 8 on the table, it's like your stress level goes up a bit and you've got a bit of a twitch, or other people get stressed. So your stress spreads to other people. It's when it starts going up. So when you start hitting things like 10, you freeze,
Yeah.
which in most situations is that character's, depending on what you're doing, but that character's dead. Seat cover, that's a good one. You wish you get seat cover. Your character runs and gets into like somewhere safe. Um, Scream, fair enough. Flee, again, another one. And then my personal favorite, and the one that leads to the downfall of, and if you're playing Marines, Berserk. You
Yeah.
may immediately attack the nearest person or creature, friendly or not. And then 15 is catatonic, and you've
Yeah.
checked out.
So the more stress, the number of stress dice you're rolling is that's what your stress is. That's just a whole number. And so if you have to make a panic roll, you're going to take that number and add it to D6. So obviously, if you're rolling 3 or 4 or 5 extra dice in the roll of in the form of stress dice, and you are forced to make a panic roll, either because you rolled a face hugger on one or more of those dice, or because the GM says you have to make a panic roll because of the situation. Obviously, the more stress you have built up, the more likely you are to suffer a panic response, and more likely that that panic response will be something catastrophic. Now, I like in a general sense, I like the idea of this scaling um, risk. And
Yeah.
as you as a player, you have the option. If you fail a roll and you have some stress built up, you can choose to push, but you're going to add more stress. Or you could choose to not push and just accept the failure. There is an economy to it on like a gamey side, as you might say, that gives you options. Now, there are ways to release stress, to reduce the amount of stress that you have. It doesn't become like the amount of radiation you've absorbed and you're just stuck with it. Um, every character has a way that is unique to them or special to them that enables them, maybe during like a short rest, they go like pray, or they go shoot up drugs, or they go, they're all different kinds of, let's say, positive and negative ways to deal with stress, like in real life. So you can reduce the amount of stress you have, and then obviously you lose those extra dice to roll, but you also then are rolling fewer things that could cause you panic, and you have fewer points, which are then less likely to cause you to really flip out um, in one of those situations.
I mean, generally, it seems like a good idea, and I like how they've done it. So it's exactly what we see in the games, that some characters, when the shit hit the fan, I mean, it's Hudson go, game over, man, game over. I mean, we see this through the first two Alien films.
Oh
We
yeah.
see this all the times. Characters losing their shit, and some run, and some go mental, and some just shut down, and so it matches that quite well. And other characters just get really amped up, and they're better because they can cope
Yeah.
with the stress. I th- I think
Or yeah, just depending on the situation, on the story, their way of dealing with stress, either to reduce it or just to manage it, is it just works better in the situation. And there are lots of story examples for that. One thing before we go into the commentary on this, I do want to say that the core rule book of the first edition, is 400 pages. It's a brick. It is like most Free League, pretty much like all Free League stuff, has a very distinct vibe and
yeah,
style to it. There's lots of like green screen monitor green colors on black pages, and so it has for me, it communicates a very clear like alien feel. It looks like you're looking at one of those green screen monitors from either Alien or Aliens. Lots of equipment, lots of art, One thing I will point out that, and I think this is just it's just a formatting decision by Free League. Uh, there's a lot of dead space on their pages, and so a 400 page book, I'd be curious to know what the page, or not the page count, the word count is,
Mm.
because this is not equivalent to like a 400 page WotC book or a 400 page Modiphius book. I mean, I'm looking
No.
at one page where there is a table that has 10 lines in it, and that's the only text on the page, and the rest of the page is just a picture. There's a lot like that. That said, it's a nice looking book, and everything you need for the game is in that book.
I think one other thing worth pointing out about, I mean, generally there is a lot of stuff in, there's more than just the basic xenomorphs in here. You don't have to play as Marines. There's rules as playing, different things. I think there's a reasonable amount of ideas of what you can. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of other stuff. There's different planets, which obviously in the Alien films, we basically only really see sort of one planet
Yeah,
twice. And we briefly see Earth, and then on some of the other things, a lot of time we're in like spaceships and asteroids and things. They cram a lot of other stuff in there, which I'm assuming they've taken from sort of things like comics and books and stuff. And then they do, there's quite a lot of good, reasonable stuff in there for GMs. And then they have this idea of actually the game is split into cinematic versus campaign play, with the idea that cinematic scenarios are meant to be played as a one-off, and they're designed, they've released a couple of these for people to buy, where the idea is that you have pre-built characters and there's multiple ones, and if your characters die, you get to pick up another pre-built character.
yeah,
But then there's
and,
also
and they're all meat grinders in some way,
yeah,
shape, or form.
and then there's this kind of campaign play where you can go into the detail, and then
Yeah,
there's
that's
lots of
more of a
background stuff.
traditional, like
Yeah,
long-term RPG approach. Now, here's where here's where I'm fine with dropping into to commentary. Uh, when this game was announced, I bought the deluxe set directly from Free League. So I got the core book, I got it like another adventure or two, I got a bunch of counters, I got dice, I blah 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 blah, I got all stuff, and I got all the PDFs. And so I have run the cinematic adventures that came with this set. There were two of them. I have um, I have played the Destroyer of Worlds Colonial Marines
I've run that.
campaign, and then I have played several homebrew cinematic creations from people. And like I said, Free League has announced that they are going to kickstart a new starter set and a new updated version of the rules with more content and all that and so on and so forth. And I think that's terrific. And I think that's what spurred us to talk about this, is that we've mentioned this game a bunch of times, but we haven't really ever gone into what it is. And here's my thought on the game. I think that its strength is also its Achilles heel.
100%.
And I've never met a game where it was so perfectly that issue, that and it's not just like I grind on a lot about the panic mechanic, which I think actually is broken,
Yeah,
because of how quickly, and if you were to play the scenarios like you see in the movies, how quickly the characters build up stress to the point where they become almost non-functional. And this is after playing I hit this after playing Destroyer of Worlds and playing this like elite Marine commander who could do nothing. Who it got
yeah,
to a point very quickly where the demands of the story put this very firm time suspense pressure. It's like you have to keep moving, but our characters all had so much stress built up that we were non-functional as a group. And so I think that it's like, you're 19 or 20 years old and you go to the party and you have one drink and that's fun. Then you have two drinks and that's fun. And then like you have five drinks really quickly and then you're legless and puking on yourself a few moments later. It's like I think they mechanically, I think they pushed it too far, and it ends up resulting in game in table results that make the game not particularly playable.
yeah.
So
Um,
there's panic. I have one other thing
well, I'll
that
go
I
on to
think
that
kills it,
because
but I want to talk about the panic piece. What do you
two of the
think?
things I have is about the panic. So, firstly, the first thing is it like you said, it's almost on a knife edge. You build initially, you're building up the stress, and it's not an issue, and then you suddenly hit this massive spiral of one person gets shot, and then their stress goes up a bit, and then they have to make a panic roll, and then they roll one of the results that means everybody gets stressed. Everybody gets stressed. Someone else then fails, and bear in mind, I'm playing this with two people. That's not a huge amount of panic rolls going on. But it's very quickly to get this spiral where a bunch of things trigger at the same time. And usually the bad one is someone rolls the one that they goes berserk, which means they shoot someone else, which means because they've taken damage, they now get a load of stress, which means they get and everything goes to pot. Now,
Yep.
it's actually very, if you filmed this and it was a film, it would look like an episode of Aliens. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's fun. As the GM, I always have a great time playing Alien because I don't even have to throw a lot. The first one I played, it's either the one out of the book or it was in the starter box. Very little effort, and one alien I think went through, or it might have been a neomorph or something, went through like one space recovery crew. Like the four
Oh, in
characters, they
Heartbeat.
had two, they died, they had another two, and then I gave them the second crew to players, and it went from there. I did like 4 TPKs in one night. Admittedly, that's really only two, but I went through like eight NPCs, eight PCs with one alien because they weren't skilled. And then we said when we did Destroyer of Worlds, it was the same thing. And a lot of this was not the alien picking people off stealthily one by one and making it like that. No, this was the stress getting to such a
Yep.
point. Every time you got into a combat situation, particularly in Destroyer of Worlds, and like you said, not having the downtime in between. Because like it said, like 10, 15 minutes of rest, you get to bring your stress down by one. You need to be able to bring it down by 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Now,
And
building on that, the thing that, because it's still sticking on panic, the thing I would like to see in second edition is a bit more finesse to this panic roll.
yeah.
And it's the thing I suggest you. So you said in your horror game you were doing, right, I want to have like this roll and my characters can like flee or go berserk. And I said, well, what would be cool is if you had different levels of like different slots in your like meter for characters that are more likely to flee or characters that are more likely to berserk and so on. I'd like to see that in Alien because at the moment it doesn't matter whether you are a marine or you're a scientist or you're a truck or whatever you are. You have the same panic table, and once you're rolling on that panic table, you have the same chance of the bad stuff happening. I'd like to see a bit more finesse about you're a highly trained, not that scary kind of character, therefore you should be less likely to go berserk. I mean, I have to say, I haven't got the Marine book, so I don't know if in the Marine book it changes some of this stuff and makes them more playable. But like the panic rule is exactly what you said. It's both the thing that makes the game really feel like Aliens because characters lose their shit, but it also
Well,
kind of
you know what?
ruins the game.
But the panic rule. This is the panic rules to me are like they are so they're so bright and they're so loud. It's like if you invite someone to sit down and have like, I don't know, they've never had Mexican food before. You say, "Hey, let's have some, good Mexican food." And you just pour on like the jalapenos and other chilies and you scorch the inside of their face. Yes, you gave them a Mexican flavor. Oh, and you throw some cumin in there. You gave them that flavor, but you gave it to them in like such this like fire hose like blast that they're not able to appreciate anything else and they're stuck with only that. Yeah, I think that it, I think that different kinds of characters now the system does have like talents, feats, special abilities that characters have. I do think that they ought to plug in some kind of way that different kinds of characters can be extra resistant to certain kinds of panic or certain avenues of things that would make them flip out. Because again, I said we played Destroyer of Worlds and there was one player whose character was on drugs, and that was the only character that was able to function. Wait a minute, let's see if this stops. That was the only character that's able to function, and that player was very happy with it. That player was a very like nihilistic sort of player. Liked it when characters died horribly and ruined and like muckety muck and that kind of thing. The trouble is, and this takes us to the next piece, is that Alien, and I think this is very clever, the idea, purports to offer two different modalities of play, the cinematic and campaign. And campaign is like everything we've always played, so we can put that aside. Cinematic is supposed to be cranked up loud, where more than likely you're going to have characters that are going to die and die horribly and things, and there's going to be player versus player. And all of the uh, even Destroyer Worlds plugs in the intra-party competition and friction. All of the other adventures that they've put out, they're very well done. They have
Hmm.
roles that have all kinds of specific information about this is what your character's agenda is and all that kind of thing. And so it fits very well for this idea of a cinematic, a one shot, whether that one shot is literally one session or it's just a short story arc and you end up killing everybody in like 2 sessions. That's great. But here's the problem that I have with it is that Aliens is it's so point on unique. And in order for it to be Alien or Aliens, it requires lots of destructive violence. It requires a xenomorph. It almost damn near requires a crooked corporation or some kind of crooked people that are, the crooked big people that are trying to screw the little guys, and a bunch of either innocents, as in the form of space truckers, or badasses who aren't nearly as badass as they think they are. And that's colonial marines. That is those are the essential ingredients to Alien. And if you don't have those ingredients, think about that. If you have crooked corporation and space truckers, but you have no xenomorphs, nor any whiff of them, you I don't know what you have. You don't have Alien.
Yeah.
If you pull out the xenomorphs, you don't have Alien. Period. Everything else in the world points to this very like bright lights, loud noise sort of story. We have 10 minutes. And once you pull one of those things out, you don't have Alien anymore.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it's like that heap of jalapenos on your nachos. How often can you eat that and not be like, oh, it's this again? Because every single adventure, and here's the funny thing, I'm looking at the news about the Kickstarter, and it offers this new adventure. Here it comes. This is great. This is the new adventure. It's going to have a new cinematic scenario box set, Rapture Protocol, which returns to the roots of the franchise. Here it comes. This is super original, featuring the crew of a small starfreighter on a resupply run to the remote industrial colony, soon embroiled in a deadly conflict. What's new about that? Aside
Yeah.
from Alien 3, which is trash, and Aliens, that's pretty much, to some extent or another, there is one Alien story. That's the
Yeah. I mean,
problem.
obviously, the other reason I wanted to talk about it is because Romulus had just come out, and I really enjoyed Romulus. Like,
Hmm.
it's probably the only good Alien film I've seen in the cinema because I didn't get to see the first two in the cinema.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it's still the same story.
It
I'm not
is.
gonna, I'm not, no more spoilers than that,
No,
but it's still essentially, it's not a massively new story.
no.
Now, luckily, because Prometheus and Covenant were pretty terrible, it doesn't need to be a new story. It was well done and it was an Alien film, but I'm 100% with you that I don't see the point of a campaign
No.
mode in this thing because I don't see what you would keep doing episode. For a start, your players would. I've done it again. Players will die. The characters will die
Yep.
again, and you'll be constantly
Yep.
having to make new characters. So that doesn't sound fun. But I'm not sure what you're putting into it. It works best in a cinematic thing, but it's not something you can regularly. So to me, it's this. We've mentioned. I think we've used it in the past. It's like a palate cleanser. You've just spent a
Yep.
year playing D&D and your heroes vanquish the evil High Lord at the end of it. And the GM's like, right, now I'm going to kill you all. Let's play
Yeah.
Alien. And the GM
Well,
gets to kill all the characters. Great. But you
yeah.
can't do it often.
And it's not just your character's probably gonna die horribly. Your
Mhm.
character is probably gonna die horribly. And you're gonna lose control of your character probably
Yeah,
a few
before
times
that.
in the session, and
Yeah.
bad things are gonna ensue as part of that. And you are going to have intra-party friction. And your character is probably gonna have to do things that you as a player are like, wow, I recognize that this is totally bad for my character, but I have to do this anyway, or I have to accept that this other player is doing these things. All of those things are essential to make for that right alien vibe. And Free League has done a brilliant job in making that happen. But that's the problem. I
Yeah.
think if you play this game, even if you were to play this game once a year at a game convention in a super compressed 4 hour session, the last time I played it was last year at a local game convention. Very ambitious GM, had two parties on two different ships and a co
Yeah, cool.
GM and all that stuff. And it actually worked out pretty well, but it was the same freaking story. There is one alien story,
Yeah.
and that's it. And there is the problem. Free League has done such a brilliant job of perfectly modeling that, but uh, but it can only do that one thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know with a second edition, I don't know what can be done.
I
Mechanically,
agree with you.
the panic system can be worked on. That's
Yes.
one thing. But I just don't see how you can have all the things that are essential for Alien and not have just the same story over and over. Because every single cinematic scenario they've put out, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And then like I'm glad I've bought the book and I'm glad I've run it and like I got the Destroyer of Worlds adventure and I'm glad I run that because
Yeah.
it's like a wild ride and
Oh yeah.
it's good fun. But you have to kind of think, well, do I need a second edition? Which even if they sort of tweak some of the rules, this is not a game you're going to keep playing and playing. But it's actually a game that I wish what they would release is just the adventures. Here's the adventure, like a starter box. Here's the adventure. Here's the bait because you don't need the rule book's got all of these rules for ships and equipment, loads of stuff. Really, I wish all they released for this game is just the cinematic things in boxes, for 30, 40 pounds, so $50. Right, here's the rules. Here's all your characters. Here's a load of really nice player raids, and you're just buying this to run this one, this one adventure in 1 or 2 sessions, and all the rules are in it. Because
Yep.
there's no real point to having the rule book on top of that.
No.
Because it's
Well,
not
people will buy it.
well, yeah. I mean, yeah, to make money for them,
Sure,
it is.
sure.
But I mean, if people are going to write their own adventures, I just don't see this as a game you can keep coming back to and back to and back
No.
to. It's for me, it is the king of one shots. Except actually, that's not true because I think Outgun does one shots really, really well, and
Yeah,
the page count and
it's
stuff
just
on that is
it's
much
such
more.
an odd thing that the replayability is just not there. I don't see it.
And
And
again,
if you do,
it's not a fault of. I can't stress this enough. This is not a fault of Free League. That's what
no.
we're trying to say here. This is a great book and it's a good
Yep.
system. It's the property.
Yep. I
It's
agree.
we it's from what we're so I mean if someone could have proved us wrong and they've run a massive campaign in this, but I think without everything feeling very samey, and Jeremy said it very eloquently, the problem with Alien is that every story has to be this certain list of things which to make it feel like Alien, which means then you can't do a lot different, which means everyone seems the same,
Yep.
which is why the films have been very repetitive because
Yeah.
there's not a huge amount you can go without suddenly you're not playing Alien anymore.
Yeah. And therein lies the problem. So my thought is, play it at a con, pick up the starter set,
Totally.
and if at all, and recognize that you'll play it, a few times unless you are the super fan who somehow never gets tired of another chocolate chip cookie that tastes exactly like every other chocolate chip cookie. There you
Um,
have it.
yeah, I mean, I might well back it in PDF form, but and then wait to get the core book cheap, hopefully somewhere,
Now,
just because I'm
if
interested.
someone were to run it at a con, I would play it. I would give it a shot, the second edition rules. But otherwise, it's like I've been there, done that. I don't need to be there or do that again. And so I have no ill will toward it. I just see no enjoyability or like further utility in playing it because I know exactly what it's going to be. And the other hard thing, and this is my last piece, is that because it's such a well-known property and so many of us in geekdom have seen it all, you have to play dumb so much.
Yeah,
You have to play your dumb innocent space trucker character and get killed. And I've had GMs. The last time I played it, the GM was like the king of the railroad, and I was like, dude, I'm thinking to myself like, I am here to play a role to produce specific outcomes. I actually don't have agency as a player through my character because my character is supposed to be this whatever space trucker type guy, and I know what I'm supposed to do to fit the story's needs. But that's I'm just along for the ride.
I think it's what it is that to me the Alien role playing game is it's one wild ride, but
But it's only one ride.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So everyone's supposed to like, they're supposed to subscribe, they're supposed to join the Discord, they're supposed to comment. You're supposed to tell us that we're wrong about Alien and that it's the best thing in the whole wide world. Or you're supposed to go, yeah, actually, maybe you got a point there. Or say something else.
I still love it. It's some of the
Yeah.
most fun I've had running a role playing game in the last 5
Yep.
or so years that it's been out. But
First,
doesn't it?
second, third time. And then,
Yeah,
then the
I've done it
drop off.
twice and we haven't gone back after the second time
Yeah, I've run it
because
like 3 or 4 times, and I've played it about that many times, and the drop off was quick and sharp. But anyway, like, subscribe, join the conversation, tell us we're morons, tell us we're great, whatever. How's that? All right, thumbs up to that. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can join our Discord, you can subscribe to the podcast, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes. Thanks again. Have a great day. We look forward to talking with you.